My silence echoes with forgotten names. Mirror cracked in crimson night. 命はただ舞い散る花。Ashes fall like silver rain, thrown untouched by fear or pain. Curtains drawn, a world denied. 微笑みさえ罪に染まる。 Black, black, black is the sky. I rain, I burn, I never die. 終わらせるのはこの手。フィナレは出国の歌。 Black, black, black is the flame. Alone, unknown, I bear no name. ヒーローのいらないしじまこそが勝者の証。 Shadow march through twisted light. Golden lights collapse in night. 避けた空に舞う言葉。 Truth is dead, long live the sky. Time is bleeding, hearts decay. No dawn comes to claim this day. 言葉の奥に潜む刃。誰も触れぬ孤独の花。 Crush, crush, crush the light. No truth, no fate, just endless night. 偽りごと愛にして響くのは無音のララバイ。 Burn, burn, burn the light. This kingdom ruled by my goodbye. 誰も届かぬ場所で今永遠だけがそばにいる。 No gods remain, no stars align. A whisper rules what's left behind. 声なき声が支配する。忘却へと続く踊。 Black, black, black is the sky. I rain, I burn, I never die. 終わらせるのはこの手。フィナレは漆黒の歌。 Black, black, black is the flame. Alone, unknown, I bear no name. ヒーローのいらないしじまこそが勝者の証。 Rise, rise, rise in the fall. I stand alone above it all. 滅びの果て咲いた花。その名もシャヌ王の歌。 Cry, cry, cry in vain. Still I remain, still I remain. 疲労を超えた孤独へと最後の影が踊り出す。 Crown of void, thorns of flame. My silence echoes with forgotten names. Mirror cracked in crimson night. 命はただ舞い散る花。 Ashes fall like silver rain, thrown untouched by fear or pain. Curtains drawn, a world denied. 微笑みさえ罪に染まる。 Black, black, black is the sky. I rain, I burn, I never die. 終わらせるのはこの手。フィナレは出国の歌。 Black, black, black is the flame. Alone, unknown, I bear no name. ヒーローのいらないしじまこそが勝者の証。 Shadow march through twisted light Golden lights collapse in night 避けた空に舞う言葉 Truth is dead, long live the sky Time is bleeding, hearts decay No dawn comes to claim this day 言葉の奥に潜む刃誰も触れぬ孤独の花 Crush, crush, crush the light No truth, no fate, just endless night 偽りごと愛にして響くのは無音のララバイ Burn, burn, burn the light This kingdom ruled by my goodbye 誰も届かぬ場所で今永遠だけがそばにいる No gods remain No stars align A whisper rules what's left behind 声なき声が支配する忘却へと続く踊 Black, black, black is the sky I reign, I burn, I never die 終わらせるのはこの手フィナレは漆黒の歌 Black, black, black is the flame Alone, unknown, I bear no name 日がのいらないしじまこそが勝者の証 Rise, rise, rise in the fall I stand alone above it all 滅びの果て咲いた花その名もシャヌオの歌 Cry, cry, cry in vain Still I remain, still I remain 日を越えた孤独へと最後の影が踊り出す Crown of void, thorns of flame My silence echoes with forgotten names Mirror cracked in crimson night 命はただ舞い散る花 Ashes fall like silver rain From untouched by fear or pain Curtains drawn, a world denied 微笑みさえ罪に染まる Black, black, black is the sky I reign, I burn, I never die 終わらせるのはこの手フィナレは漆黒の歌 Black, black, black is the flame Alone, unknown, I bear no name 日は道具いらないしじまこそが勝者の証 Shadow march through twisted light Golden lights collapse in night 避けた空に舞う言葉 Truth is dead, long live the sky Time is bleeding, hearts decay No dawn comes to claim this day 言葉の奥に潜む刃誰も触れぬ孤独の花 Crush, crush, crush the light No truth, no fate, just endless night 偽りごと愛にして響くのは無音のララバイ Burn, burn, burn the light This kingdom ruled by my goodbye 誰も届かぬ場所で今永遠だけがそばにいる No gods remain No stars align A whisper rules what's left behind 声
we're trying a new plugin today. Twitch is telling me it's unstable. My OBS looks fine though, and I'm looking through YouTube and Twitch and the other platform, but they all look fine to me. Although YouTube is giving me the usual nonsense and where like it wants all the bitrate or something like that. You know what we're gonna do, guys? We have to change the thumbnail for YouTube. Will it let me? Is the question. Can I change the thumbnail? Yes, I can change the thumbnail. Coolios. I don't think I can do a thumbnail on Twitch yet until like the VOD is done. At least I don't think so. Why is Twitch saying unstable? I don't like that. But OBS looks fine. Everything seems to be working. Maybe it's because the plugin is it's still in beta. Maybe that's why. Hold on, if I play it, I don't see any buffering. Everything looks fine. Yes, and for anyone who knows, I did move the sub goal to the chat logins. I downloaded this thing to put the extra label, but I forgot to put it. And we ain't doing that right now. Oh, I might do it later in the week though. Okay, so I did go ahead and scroll through the story to see how many chapters we have. It looks like there's like 3 more chapters left. So we might be able to finish it up today, and then tomorrow we could work on returning to the adventures of Sherlock Holmes. That is the plan anyway. So right now I have regular iced tea, so I might have to eventually, probably now, have to go and get regular tea. But yeah. Let me just give it a quick watch through the 3 platforms. So we have our thumbnail, Coolios, that's uploaded. I don't know, should I have a different thumbnail for when we're live? If we're doing reading? Compared to the normal thumbnail? Because I have the regular thumbnail on both the VOD and on the video that I upload. Maybe I should create a different one, like, super quick. Let me duplicate this layer. So we're gonna delete this. Let me upload. I don't think I have it up here already. I should, unless I got rid of it. Yeah, I do have it here already. Okay, cool. We're gonna make this full screen. How do I change the color? Actually, let's get rid of all this, because okay, now let me try changing the color. I think that's a cute thumbnail, so we're gonna download that. No, just wanted that one. I didn't want all of them. Canva is so annoying. And it didn't download. Okay, so not that one. Select this, like that. Download. Why is it not downloading? There we go. Oh my god, now it's so many. Yeah, so I guess my browser was blocking it. Okay, so now that the The thumbnail is now uploaded. And it's updated. So let me do this so I can see chat. Is there ways to collapse? There it is. Do I need to shrink this? I don't think so. Okay, so today we'll be continuing Sherlock Holmes. This is chapter... I have mentioned I'm not good at Roman numerals, so... Are we really on chapter 13? I thought it was chapter 11. Or did I skip it of a chapter? I would have sworn we were in chapter 12. Now I have to look at the table of contents. Hold on, so we're selecting the book, The Hound of the Baskervilles. So The Death of the Moor is chapter 12. The abstract from the Diary of Sherlock Holmes is chapter 10. Huh? No. Chapter X, that's 10, right? I think that's where I'm getting thrown off, is the Roman numerals. Yeah, that's 10. So the next Roman numeral it gives me is XI. Which is 11. Man on the Tour. Hey, Helio. Yeah, no, we just started. I'm trying to figure out these chapters. Either the Roman numerals are wrong here, or I'm being stupid. Because the video that's coming in on Sunday, I have it as 11 and 12. Okay, so the abstract of the Diary of Dr. Watson. Abstract from the Diary of Dr. Watson. Hello, the Fan Wiggles. How are you? The abstract from the Diary of Dr. Watson. That is chapter 10. The abstract of the Diary of Dr. Watson. Yes, that's what we have here. So after this one, yeah, my day's been great so far. This is chapter 11. X1 is 11, the man of the tour, which is what I put. So it's 10, 11. I'm not going stupid. 10, 11. So what's the next chapter? 11, 11, 11, 11, 11, 11. Oh, this is okay. I skipped a chapter. That's what happened. But I would have sworn I read this. I may have read this. The man on the tour, and then there's death on the tour. I could probably skim through the video I did last week just to see what chapter we were on. Let me see here. But I'm pretty sure we read through this chapter already. Where are my markers? Let's see here. Okay, this is the last marker I did for that. No. Let's see here. So, chapter 10, the abstract, the Diary of Dr. Watson. This is from the last Switch stream. Chapter 11, the man on the tour. We resumed reading right here. Okay, so indifferent matter. Hold on. Indifferent. How many times do they actually use this word? This doesn't help me. Okay, the convict on the moor. Mm. Okay, what was the last part I said? Maybe that will help. Okay, no, I think this was the last chapter. Okay, yeah. Okay, now I know where we are. The titles are so similar to each other. That's what's throwing me off. So we're actually on chapter 12. So we're gonna put a marker in chat. Okay. So, chapter 12, Death on the Moor. For a moment or two, I sat breathless, hardly able to believe my ears. Then my senses and my voice came back to me. While a crushing weight of responsibility seemed in an instant to be lifted from my soul. That cold, incisive, ironical voice could belong to but one man in all the world. Holmes! I cried, Holmes! Come out, said he. Please be careful with the revolver. I stopped under the rude, lintel, and there he sat upon a stone outside, his gray eyes dancing with amusement as they fell upon my astounded features. He was thin and worn, but clear and alert. His keen face, brazened by the sun and roughed by the wind, In his tweed suit and cloth cap, he looked like any other tourist upon the moor. And he contrived with that cat-like love of personal cleanliness, which was one of his characteristics, that his chin should be as smooth and his linen as perfect as if he were in Baker Street. I never was more glad to see anyone in my life, said I, as I wrung him by the hand. Or more astonished, eh? Well, I must confess to it. The surprise was not all on one side, I assure you. I had no idea that you had found my occasional retreat. Still less that you were inside it, until I was within 20 paces of the door. My footprint, I presume? No, Watson. I feared that I could not undertake to recognize your footprint amid all the footprints of the world. If you seriously desire to deceive me, you must change your tobacconist. For when I see the stub of a cigarette marked Brandley, Oxford Street, I know that my friend Watson is in the neighborhood. You will see it there beside the path. You threw it down, no doubt, at that supreme moment when you charged into the empty hut. Exactly. I thought as much, and knowing your admirable tendencies, I was convinced that you were sitting in an ambush, a weapon within reach, waiting for the tenant to return. So you actually thought that I was the criminal. I did not know who you were, but I was determined to find out. Excellent, Watson. How did you localize me? You saw me perhaps on the night of the convict hunt, which I was so imprudent as to allow the moon to rise behind me. Yes, I saw you then, and I have no doubt searched all the huts until you came to this one. No, your boy had been observed, and that gave me a guide where to look. The old gentleman with the telescope, no doubt? I cannot make it out when first I saw the light flashing upon the lenses. He rose and peeked into the hut. Ha! I see that Cartwright has brought up some supplies. What's this paper? So you have been to Colby Tracy, have you? Yes. To see Miss Laura Lawns? Exactly. Well done. Our researches have evidently been running on parallel lines. And when we unite our results, I expect we shall have a fairly full knowledge of the case. Well, I am glad from my heart that you are here, for indeed the responsibility and the mystery are both becoming too much for my nerves. But how in the name of wonder did you come here? And what have you been doing? I thought that you were in Baker Street working out that case of the blackmailing. That was what I wished you to think. Then you used me. And yet do not trust me? I cried with some bitterness. I think that I have deserved better at your hands, Holmes. My dear fellow, you have been invaluable to me in this, as in many other cases, and I beg that you will forgive me if I have seemed to play a trick upon you. In truth, it was partly for your own sake that I did it, and it was my appreciation of the hold on. I'm about to look this up. Oh yeah, it is appreciation. That's such a weird word to use. And it was my appreciation of the danger which you ran, which led me to come down and examine the matter for myself. Had I been with Sir Henry and it is confident that my point of view would have been the same as yours, and my presence would have warned our very formidable opponents to be on their guard. As it is, I have been able to get about as I could. Not possibly have done have I been living in the hall, and I remain on an unknown factor in the business, ready to throw in all my weight at a critical moment. But why keep me in the dark? For you to know could not have helped us, and might possibly have led to my discovery. You would have wished to tell me something, or in your kindness you would have brought me out some comfort or other. And so an unnecessary risk would be run. I brought Cartwright down with me. You remember the little chap at the express office? And has seen after my simple wants, a loaf of bread and a clean collar. What does man want more? He has given me an extra pair of eyes upon a very active pair of feet, and both have been invaluable. Then my reports have all been wasted? My voice trembled as I recalled the pains and the pride with which I had composed them. Holmes took a bundle of papers from his pocket. Here are your reports, my dear fellow, and very well thumbed, I assure you. I made excellent arrangements, and they are only delayed 1 day upon their way. I must compliment you exceedingly upon the zeal and intelligence which you have shown over an extraordinarily difficult case. I was still rather raw over the deception which had been practiced upon me, but the warmth of Holmes' praise drove my anger from my mind. I felt also in my heart that he was right in what he said, and that it was really best for our purpose, that I should not have known that he was upon the moor. That's better, said he, seeing this shadow rise from my face. And now tell me the result of your visit to Miss Lauren Lane's. It was not difficult for me to guess that it was to see her that you had gone. For I am already aware that she is the one person, Anknkuu Tracy, who might be of service to us in the matter. In fact, if you had not gone today, it is exceedingly probable that I should have gone tomorrow. The sun had set and dusk was settling over the moor. The air had turned chill, and we withdrew into the hut for warmth. There, sitting together in the twilight, I told Holmes of my conversation with the lady. So interested was he that I had to repeat some of it twice before he was satisfied. This is most important, and said he, when I had concluded. It fills up a gap which I had been unable to bridge. In this most complex affair, you are aware perhaps that a close intimacy exists between this lady and the man Stapleton. I did not know of a close intimacy. There can be no doubt about the matter. They meet, they write. There was a complete understanding between them. Now this puts a very powerful weapon into our hands. I could only use it to detach his wife. His wife? I am giving you some information now. In return for all that you have given me, the lady who has passed here as Miss Stapleton is in reality his wife. Good heavens, Holmes, are you sure of what you say? How could he have permitted Sir Henry to fall in love with her? Sir Henry's falling in love could do no harm to anyone except Sir Henry. He took particular care that Sir Henry did not make love to her, as you have yourself observed. I repeated that the lady is his wife and not his sister. But why this elaborate deception? Because he foresaw that she would be very much more useful to him in the character of a free woman. All my unspoken instincts, my vague suspicions suddenly took shape and centered upon the naturalist. And that impassive, colorless man with his straw hat and his butterfly net, I seemed to see something terrible, a creature and indefinite patience to craft, with a smiling face and a murderous heart. It is he, then, who is our enemy. It is he who dodged us in London? So I read the riddle. And the warning, it must have come from her. Exactly. The shape of some monstrous venery, half seen, half guessed, loomed through the darkness, which had girded me so long. But are you sure of this, Holmes? How do you know that the woman is his wife? Because he so far forgot himself as to tell you a true piece of autobiography upon the occasion when he first met you, and I dare say he has many a time regretted it since. He was once a schoolmaster in the north of England. Now there is no one more easy to trace than a schoolmaster. There are scholastic agencies by which one may identify many man who has been in the profession. A little investigation showed me that a school had come to grief under ostrous circumstances, and that the man who had owned it, the name was different, had disappeared with his wife. The descriptions agreed. When I learned that the missing man was devoted to entomology, the identification was complete. The darkness was rising, but much was still hidden by the shadows. If this woman is in truth his wife, where does Miss Laura Rhodes come in? I asked. That is one of the points upon which your own researches have shed a light. Your interview with the lady has cleared the situation very much. I did not know about a projected divorce between herself and her husband. In that case, regarding Stapleton as an unmarried man, she counted no doubt upon becoming his wife. And when she is undeceived, why then, we may find a lady of service. It must be our first duty to see her, both of us, tomorrow. Don't you think, Watson, that you are away from your charge rather long? Your place should be at Bakersville Hall. The last red streaks had faded away in the west, and night had settled upon the moor. A few faint stars were glimmering in a violet sky. One last question, Holmes, I said as I rose. Surely there is no need of secrecy between you and me. What is the meaning of it all? What is he after? Moore's voice sank as he answered. It is murder, Watson. Refined, cold-blooded, deliberate murder. Do not ask me for particulars. My nets are closing upon him, even as his are upon Sir Henry, and with your help, he is already almost at my mercy. There is but one danger which can threaten us, and it's that he should strike before we are ready to do so. Another day, 2, at the most, and I have my keys complete. But until then, guard your charge as closely as ever. A fond mother watched her ailing child. Your mission today has justified itself, and yet I could almost wish that you had not left the side. Hack! A terrible scream, a prolonged yell of horror and anguish burst out of the silence of the moor. That frightful cry turned the blood to ice in my veins. Oh my God, I gasped. What is it? What does it mean? Holmes had sprung to his feet, and I saw his dark, athletic outline at the door of the hut, his shoulders stooping, his head thrust forward, his face peering into the darkness. Hush, he whispered, hush. The cry had been loud, an accident of its venomous, but it had peeled out from somewhere far. off on the shadowy plain. Now it bursts upon our ears, nearing louder, more urgent than before. "Where is it?" Holmes whispered, and I knew from the thrill of his voice that he, the man of iron, was shaken to the soul. "Where is it, Watson?" "There, I think." I pointed into the darkness. "No, there." Again the exiled cries sweep through the silent night, louder and much nearer than ever. And a new sound mingled with it, a deep, muttered of rumble, musical and yet menacing, rising and falling like the low, constant murmur of the sea. "The Hound!" cried Holmes. "Come, Watson, come! Great heavens, we are too late." He had started running swiftly over the moor, and I had followed at his heels. But now, from somewhere among the broken ground, immediately in front of us, there came out last despairing yell, and then a dull, heavy thud. He halted and listened. Not another sound broke the heavy silence of the windless night. I saw Holmes put his hand to his forehead like a man distracted. He stampled his feet upon the ground. "He is beating us, Watson. We are too late." No, surely not." Fool that I was to hold my hand, and you, Watson, see what comes of abandoning your charge. But by heavens, as the worst has happened, we'll avenge him. Blindly we ran through the gloom, blundering against boulder, forcing our way through the gorse bushes, panting uphill and rushing down slopes, heading away in the direction whence those dreadful sounds had come. At every rise, Holmes looked eagerly around him, but the shadows were thick upon the moor, and nothing moved upon its dreary face. "Can you see anything?" "Nothing. But what is that?" A low moan had fallen upon our ears. There it was again, upon our left. On that side, a ridge of rocks ended in a sheer cliff, which overlooked a stone-strewed slope. On its jagged face was spread eagles some dark, irregular objects. As we ran towards it, the vague outline hardened into a definite shape. It was a prostrate man face downward upon the ground, the head doubled over him at a horrible angle, the shoulders rounded and the body hunched together, as if in the act of throwing a somersault. Stroke text was the attitude that I could not for the instant realize that moan had been the passing of his soul. Not a whisper, not a rustle, rose now from the dark figure over which we stooped. Holmes laid his hand upon him and held it up again with an exclamation of horror. The gleam of the match which he struck shone upon the clothed fingers and upon the ghastly pool which widened slowly from the crushed skull of the victim. And it shone upon something else, which turned our hearts sick and faint within us, the body of Sir Harry Baskerville. There was no chance of either of us forgetting that particular rubby tweed suit, the very one which he had worn on the first morning that we have seen him in Baker Street. We caught to one clear glimpse of it, and then the match flickered and went out, even as the hope had gone out of our souls. Holmes groaned, and his face glimmered white through the darkness. The brute, I cried, with clenched hands. Oh, Holmes, I should again forgive myself for having left him to this fate. I am more to blame than you, Watson. In order to have my case well-rounded and complete, I have thrown away the life of my client. It is the greatest blow which has befallen me in my career. But how could I know that he would risk his life alone upon the moor in the face of all my warnings? That we should have heard his screams, my God, those screams, and yet have been unable to save him. Where is this brute of a hound which drove him to his death? It may be lurking among those rocks at this instant in Stapleton. Where is he? He shall answer for this deed. He shall. I will see to that. Uncle and nephew have been murdered. The one frightened to death by the very sight of a beast, which he thought to be supernatural. The other driven to this end in his wild flight to escape from it. But now we have to prove the connections between the man and the beast. Say, from what we heard, we cannot even swear to the existence of the latter, since Sir Henry had evidently died from the fall. But by heavens, cunning as he is, the fellow shall be in my power before another day has passed. We stood with bitter hearts on either side of the mangled body, overwhelmed by this sudden and irrevocable disaster which had brought all our long and weary labors to so arduous an end. Then, as the moon rose, we climbed to the top of the rocks, over which our poor friend had fallen, and from the summit we gazed out over the shadowy moor. Half silver and half gloom, far away, miles off in the direction of Gimpen, a single steady yellow light was shining. It could only come from the lonely abode of the Stapletons. With a bitter curse, I shook my fist at it as I gazed. Why should we not seize him at once? Our case is not complete. The fellow is weary and cunning to the last degree. It is not what we know, but what we can prove. If we make one false move, the villain may escape us yet. What can we do? There will be plenty for us to do tomorrow. Tonight, we can only perform the last offices to our poor friend. Together, we made our way down the precipitous slope and approached the body, black and clear against the silvery stones. The agony of those contorted limbs struck me with a spasm of pain and blurred my eyes with tears. We must send for help, Holmes. We cannot carry him all the way to the hall. How heavens, are you mad? He had uttered a cry and bent over the body. Now he was dancing and laughing and wringing my hand. Could this be my stern, self-contained friend? These were hidden fires indeed. Beard. A beard. The man has a beard. A beard? It is not the baronet. It is. Why? It is my neighbor, the convict. With a feverish haste, we had turned the body over, and that dripping beard was pointed up to the cold, clear moon. There could be no doubt about the beetling forehead, the sunken animal eyes. It was indeed the same face which had glared upon me in the light of the candle from over the rock, the face of Sheldon, the criminal. Then in an instant, it was all clear to me. I remember how the baronet had told me that he had handed his old wardrobe to Barrymore. Barrymore had passed it on in order to help Sheldon in his escape. Boot, shirt, cap, it was all Sir Henry's. The tragedy was still black enough, but this man had at least deserved death by the laws of his country. I told Holmes how the matter stood, my heart bubbling over with thankfulness and joy. Then the clothes had been the poor devil's death, said he. It is clear enough that the Hound has been laid on from some article of Sir Henry, the boot which was abstracted in the hotel in all probability, and so ran this man down. There is one very singular thing, however. How come Sheldon in the darkness to know that the Hound was on his trail? He heard him? To hear a hound upon the moor would not work a hard man like the convict into such a paroxysm of terror that he would risk recapture by screaming wildly for help. But at cries he must have run a long way after he knew the animal was on his track. How did he know? A greater mystery to me is why this Hound, presuming that all conjectures are correct. I presume nothing. Well then, why this Hound should be loose tonight? I suppose that it does not always run loose upon the moor. Stapleton would not let it go unless he had reason to think that Sir Henry will be there. My difficulty is the more formidable of the two, for I think that we shall very shortly get an explanation of yours, while mine may remain forever a mystery. The question now is, what shall we do with this poor, wretch's body? Cannot leave it here to the foxes and the ravens. I suggest that we put him on one of the huts until we can communicate with the police. Exactly. I have no doubt that you and I could carry it so far. Hello, Watson. What's this? It's the man himself, but all that's wonderful. And what is this word? Audacious, not a word to show you suspicions. Not a word, or my plans crumble to the ground. A figure was approaching us over the moor, and I saw the dull red glow of a cigar. The moon shone upon him, and I could distinguish the dapper shape and sturdy walk of the naturalist. He stopped when he saw us, and then came on again. Hi, Dr. Watson, that's not you, is it? You were the last man that I should have expected to see out on the moor at this time of night. Dear me, what's this? Somebody's hurt? Nah, don't tell me that it is your friend, Sir Henry. He hurried past me. I stooped over the dead man. I heard a sharp intake of his breath, and the cigar fell from his fingers. Who is this? He stammered. It is Sheldon, the man who escaped from Princetown. Stapleton turned a ghastly face upon us, but by a supreme effort he had overcome his amazement and his disappointment. He looked sharply from Holmes to me. Dear me, what a very shocking affair. How did he die? He appears to have broken his neck by falling over these rocks. My friend and I were strolling on the moor when we heard a cry. I heard a cry also. That was what brought me out. I was uneasy about Sir Henry. Why about Sir Henry in particular? I could not help asking, because I suggested that he should come over. When he did not come, I was surprised, and I naturally became alarmed for his safety when I heard cries upon the moor. By the way, his eyes darted again from my face to Holmes. Did you hear anything else besides a cry? No, said Holmes. Did you? No. What do you mean then? Oh, you know, the stories that the peasants tell about a phantom hound and so on. And it's said to be heard at night upon the moor. I was wondering if there was any evidence such a sound tonight. We heard nothing of the kind, said I. And what is your theory of this poor fellow's death? I have no doubt that the anxiety and exposure have driven him off his head. He has rushed about the moor in a crazy state and eventually fallen over here and broken his neck. That seems the most reasonable theory, says Stapleton. And he gave a sigh, which I took to indicate his relief. What do you think about it, Mr. Sherlock Holmes? My friend bowed his compliments. You are a quick identification, said he. I have been expecting you in these parts since Dr. Watson came down. We are in time to see a tragedy. Yes, indeed, I have no doubt that my friend's explanation will cover the facts. I will take an unpleasant remembrance back to London with me tomorrow. Oh, you return tomorrow? That is my intention. I hope your visit has cast some light upon these occurrences which has puzzled us. Holmes shrugged his shoulders. One cannot always have the success for which one hopes. Investigators need facts and not led into rumors. It has not been a satisfactory case. My friend spoke in his frankness and most unconcerned manner. Stapleton still looked hard at him, then turned to me. I would suggest carrying this poor fellow to my house, but it would give my sister such a fright that I do not feel justified in doing it. I think that if we put something over his face, it will be safe until morning. And so it was arranged, resisting Stapleton's offer of hospitality. Holmes and I set off to Bakersfield Hall, leaving the naturalist to return alone. Looking back, we saw the figure moving slowly away over the broad moor, and behind him, that one black smudge on the silvered slope which showed where the man was lying, who had come so horribly to his end. Okay, and that's the end of that chapter. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and grab some tea real quick. Probably a couple minutes. We got a new K-cup, so I'll be able to do that one, not have to wait for regular tea. So give me a couple minutes and I'll be right back. Let me just finish doing this marker real quick. Okay, there we go. So it's all set when I'm back.
Footsteps vanish on a wet concrete. Cities bleeding under neon heat. No savior left in this silent fight. Only shadows whisper through the night. Kokoro no奥で何かが壊れ、誰にも聞こえない叫びが揺れる。Crimson sky and the sirens wail. Justice cracked like a rusted nail. I chase my sins through the alleyway. The rain don't wash this guilt away. そのような愛の記憶、まだ胸の奥でうついてる。Black rain, red moon, dancing slow to a dying tune. Wounds don't fade, they bloom inside this never-ending gloom. Black rain, red moon, I'm the storm, I'm the ruin. 溶けてく夢の影、忘れたくても忘れられない。Cold breath in a smoky room. Truth decays like a bloodstained bloom. I've made my bed in a bed of glass. Time cuts deep and nothing last 壊れた未来選んだ罰この街が全てを飲み込む Fate is laughing from the second floor I knock but never find a door Heartbeat sync with a loaded gun Guess I'm cursed to always run 君の声が残る夜それだけがリアルな怪しい Black rain red moon Dancing slow to a dying tune Wounds don't fade they bloom Inside this never ending gloom Black rain red moon I'm the storm I'm the ruin 溶けてく夢の影忘れたくても忘れられない No mercy in the mirror's face I lost the war but crave the chase If love was real it's buried deep Beneath the secrets that I keep 終わらせてしまうにはまだ赤い月 Black rain red moon Dancing slow to a dying tune Wounds don't fade they bloom Inside this never ending gloom Black rain red moon I'm the storm I'm the ruin 溶けてく夢の影忘れたくても忘れられない Dancing slow to a dying tune Wounds don't fade they bloom Inside this never ending gloom Black rain red moon I'm the storm I'm the ruin 抱きしめたその闇に今も名を呼んでる Footsteps vanish on a wet concrete Cities bleeding under neon heat No savior left in this silent fight Only shadows whisper through the night 心の奥で何かが壊れ誰にも聞こえない叫びが揺れる Crimson sky and the sirens wail Justice cracked like a rusted nail I chase my sins through the alleyway The rain don't wash this guilt away 嘘のような愛の記憶まだ胸の奥でうついてる Black rain red moon Dancing slow to a dying tune Wounds don't fade they bloom Inside this never ending gloom Black rain red moon I'm the storm I'm the ruin 溶けてく夢の影忘れたくても忘れられない Cold breath in a smoky room Truth decays like a bloodstained gloom I've made my bed in a bed of glass Time cuts deep and nothing lasts 壊れた未来選んだ罰この街が全てを飲み込む Fate is laughing from the second floor I knock but never find a door Heartbeat sync with a loaded gun Guess I'm cursed to always run 君の声が残る夜それだけがリアルな怪しい rain, red moon, dancing slow to a dying tune. Wounds don't fade, they bloom inside this never-ending gloom. Black rain, red moon, I'm the storm, I'm the ruin. 溶けてく夢の影、忘れたくても忘れられない。Dancing slow to a dying tune. Wounds don't fade, they bloom inside this never-ending gloom. Black rain, red moon, I'm the storm, I'm the ruin. 抱きしめたその闇に今も名を呼んでる。Footsteps vanish on a wet concrete. Cities bleeding under neon heat. No savior left in this silent fight. Only shadows whisper through the night. 心の奥で何かが壊れ、誰にも聞こえない叫びが揺れる。Crimson sky and the sirens wail. Justice cracked like a rusted nail. I chase my sins through the alleyway. The rain don't wash this guilt away. 嘘のような愛の記憶、まだ胸の奥でうついてる。Black rain, red moon, dancing slow to a dying tune. Wounds don't fade, they bloom inside this never-ending gloom. Black rain, red moon, I'm the storm, I'm the ruin. 溶けてく夢の影、忘れたくても忘れられない。Cold breath in a smoky room. Truth decays like a bloodstained bloom. I've made my bed in a bed of glass. Time cuts deep and nothing lasts. 壊れた未来選んだ罰。この街が全てを飲み込む。Fate is laughing from the second floor. I knock but never find a door. Heartbeat sync with a loaded gun. Guess I'm cursed to always run. 君の声が残る夜、それだけがリアルな怪しい。Black rain, red moon, dancing slow to a dying tune. Wounds don't fade, they bloom inside this never-ending gloom. Black rain, red moon, I'm the storm, I'm the ruin. 溶けてく夢の影、忘れたくても忘れられない。
I have a turn with tea, everyone, and it's hot. I had to take the lid off. Maybe it'll cool down faster. Thanks, I'm glad you like the song. I found it on YouTube. Okay, so we're gonna put another marker. Okay, so this is... Now we're on chapter 13. Okay, so chapter 13, fixing the nets. Our close grips at last, said Holmes, as we walked together across the moor. What a nerve the fellow has. How he pulled himself together in the face of what must have been a paralyzing shock when he found that the wrong man had fallen a victim to his plot. I told you in London, Watson, that I tell you now again, that we have never had a man more worthy of our steel. I am sorry that he has seen you. And so was I at first, but there was no getting out of it. What efforts do you think it will have upon his plans now that he knows you are here? It may cause him to be more cautious, or it may drive him to desperate measures at once. Like most clever criminals, he may be too confident in his own cleverness. Imagine that he has completely deceived us. But why should we not arrest him at once? My dear Watson, you were born to be a man of action. Your instinct is always to do something energetic. Supposing, for argument's sake, that we had him arrested tonight, what on earth the better off sound we'd be for what? For that. We could prove nothing against him. There's the devilish cunning of it. If he were acting through a human agent, we could get some evidence. But we were to drag this great dog to the light of day, it would not help us putting a rope around the neck of its master. Surely we have a case. Not a shadow of one. Only surmise and conjecture. We should be laughed out of court if we came with such a story and such evidence. There is Sir Charles' death. Found dead without a mark upon him. You and I know that he died of sheer fright. And we know also what frightened him. But how are we to get 12 solid jurymen to know it? What signs are there of a hound? Where are the marks of its fangs? Of course, we know that a hound does not bite a dead body, and that Sir Charles was dead before ever the brute overtook him. But we have to prove all this. We are not in a position to do it. Well then, tonight? We are not much better off tonight. Again, there was no direct connection between the hound and the man's death. We never saw the hound. We heard it. But we could not prove that it was running upon this man's trail. There is a complete absence of motive. I know, my dear fellow, we must reconcile ourselves to the fact that we have no case at present, and that it is worth our while to run any risk in order to establish one. And how do you propose to do so? I have great hopes of what Miss Laura Lowndes may do for us when the position of affairs is made clear to her. And I have my own plan as well. Sufficient for tomorrow is the evil thereof, but I hope before the day is past to have the upper hand at last. I could draw nothing further from him, and he walked, lost in thought, as far as Bakersfield gate. Are you coming up? Yes, I see no reason for further concealment. But one last word, Watson. Say nothing of the hound to Sir Henry. Let him think that Shelton's death was as Stapleton's would have us believe. He will have a better nerve for the idea which he will have to undergo tomorrow, when he's engaged, if I remember your report aright, to dine with these people. And so am I. Then you must excuse yourself and he must go alone. That will be easily arranged. And now, if we are too late for dinner, I think that we are both ready for our suppers. Fahrenheit was more pleased than surprised to see Sherlock Holmes, for he had for some days been expecting that recent events would bring him down from London. He did raise his eyebrows, however, when he found that my friend had neither any luggage nor any explanations for its absence. Between us, we soon supplied his wants, and then, over a belated supper, we explained to the baronet as much of our experiences as it seemed desirable that he should know. I first had the unpleasant duty of breaking the news to Barrymore and his wife. To him, it may have been an unmitigated relief, but she got bitterly in her apron. To all the world, he was the man of violence, half animal and half demon, but to her, he always remained the little, willful boy of her own girlhood, the child who had clung to her hand. Evil indeed is the man who has not once woman to mourn him. Has not one woman to mourn him. I've been moping the house all day since Watson went off in the morning, said the baronet. I guess I should have some credit, for I have kept my promise. If I hadn't sworn not to go about alone, I might have had a more lively evening, for I had a message from Stapleton asking me over there. I have no doubt that you would have had a more lively evening, said Holmes dryly. By the way, I don't suppose you appreciate that we have been mourning over you as having broken your neck. Sherlock opened his eyes. How was that? This poor wretch was dressed in your clothes. I fear your servant who gave them to him may got into trouble with the police. It is unlikely. There was no mark on any of them, as far as I know. That's lucky for him. In fact, it's lucky for all of you, since you are all on the wrong side of the law in this matter. I am not sure that, as a conspicuous, I'm pretty sure I'm saying this word wrong. Conscientious detective, my first duty is not to arrest the whole household. Watson's reports are most incriminating documents. But how about the case, said the baronet. Have you made anything out of the tangle? I don't know that Watson and I are much the wiser since we came down. I think that I shall be in the position to make the situation rather more clear to you before long. It has been exceedingly difficult and most complicated business. There are several points upon which we shall want light, but it is coming all the same. We had one experience, as Watson had no doubt told you. We heard the hound on the moor, so I can swear that it is not all empty superstition. I had something to do with dogs when I was out west, and I know one when I heard one. If you can muzzle that one and put him on a chain, I'll be ready to swear you are the greatest detective of all time. I think I will muzzle him and chain him all right, if you will give me your help. Whatever you tell me to do, I will do. Very good. And I'll ask you also to do it blindly, without always asking the reason. Just as you like. If you do this, I think the chances are that our little problem will soon be solved. I have no doubt. He stopped suddenly and stared fixated up over my head into the air. The lamp beat upon his face, and so intent, and so still that it might have been that of a clear-cut classical statue. a personification of alertness and expectations. What is it? We both cried. I could see as he looked down that he was repressing some internal emotions. His features were still composed, but his eyes shone with amusement, with amused exultation, excuse the admiration of a connoisseur, said he, as he waved his hand towards the line of portraits which covered the opposite wall. Watson won't allow that I know anything of art. But that is mere jealousy, because our views upon the subject differ. Now, these are really a very fine series of portraits. Well, I'm glad to hear you say so, said Sir Henry, glancing with some surprise at my friend. I don't pretend to know much about these things, but I'd be a better judge of a horse or a steer than of a picture. I don't know that you found time for such things. I know what is good when I see it, and I see it now. That's Canaire. I'll swear that the lady in the black silk over yonder, and the stout gentleman with the wig out to be Reynolds. They are all family portraits, I presume. Everyone. Do you know the names? Barrymore has been coaching me in them, and I think I can say my lessons fairly well. Who is the gentleman with the telescope? That is Rear Admiral Baskervilles, who served under Rodney in the West Indies. The man with the blue coat and the roll of paper is Sir William Baskerville, who was the chairman of the committees of the House of Commons under Pitt. And the cavalier opposite to me, the one with the black velvet and the lace? You have a right to know about him. That is the cause of the mischief, the wicked Hugo who started the Hound of the Baskervilles. We're not likely to forget him. I gazed with interest and some surprise upon the portrait. Dear me, said Holmes. He seems a quiet, meek-mannered man enough, but I dare say that there was a lurking devil in his eyes. I had pictured him as a more robust and refinedly mad person. There's no doubt about authenticity, for the name and the date, 1647, are on the back of the canvas. Holmes said little more, but the picture of the old oysterer seemed to have a fascination for him, and his eyes were continually fixated upon it during supper. It was not until later, when Sir Henry had gone to his room, that I was able to follow the thread of his thoughts. He led me back into the banqueting hall, his bedroom candle in his hand, and he held it up against the time-stained portrait on the wall. Do you see anything there? I looked at the broad, unplumed hat, the curling love lock, the white lace collar, and the straight, severe face which was framed between them. It was not a brutal countenance, but it was a prime, hard, and stern, with a firm set, thin-lipped mouth, and a coldly tolerant eye. It is like anyone you know. Is it like anyone you know? There is something of Sir Henry about the jaw. Just a suggestion, perhaps. But wait. But wait an instant. He stood upon a chair, holding up the light in his left hand. He curved his right arm over the broad hat and round the long ringlets. Good heavens! I cried in his amazement. The face of Stapleton had sprung out of the canvas. Ha! You see it now? My eyes have been trained to examine faces, and not their trimmings. It is the first quality of a criminal investigator that he should see through a disguise. But this is a marvelous. It might be his portrait. Yes, it is an interesting instance of a throwback, which appears to be both physical and spiritual. A study of family portraits is enough to convert a man to the doctrine of reincarnation. The fellow is a Baskerville, that is evident. With designs upon the succession? Exactly. This chance of the picture has supplied us with one of our most obvious missing links. We have him, Watson. We have him. And I dare swear that before tomorrow night, he will be fluttering in our net, as helpless as one of his own butterflies. A pen, a cord, and a card, and we add him to the Baker Street collection. He burst into one of his fits of laughter as he turned away from the portrait. I have not heard him laugh often, and it has always boded ill to somebody. I was up betimes in the morning, but Holmes was afoot earlier still, for I saw him as I dressed, coming up the drive. Yes, we should have a full day today, he remarked, and he rubbed his hands with the joy of action. The nets are all in place, and the drag is about to begin. We'll know before the day is out whether we have caught our big, lean-jawed pike, or rather he has got through the meshes. Have you been on the moor already? I have sent a report from Ribpen to for Princetown as to the death of Sheldon. I think I can promise that none of you will be troubled in the matter, and I have also communicated with my faithful Cartwright, who would certainly have pinned away at the door of my hut, as a dog does at his master's grave, if I had not set his mind at rest about my safety. What is the next move? To see Sir Henry. Ah, here he is. Good morning, Holmes, said the baronet. You look like a general who is planning a battle with his chief of the staff. That is the exact situation. Watson was asking for orders. So do I. Very good. We are engaged, as I understand, to dine with our friends the Stapletons tonight. I hope that you will come also. They are very hospitable people, and I am sure that they would be very glad to see you. I fear that Watson and I must go to London. To London? Yes, I think that we should be more useful there at the present conjuncture. The baronet's face perceptibly lengthened. I hope that you were going to see me through this business. The hall and the moor are not very pleasant places when one is alone. My dear fellow, you must trust me implicitly and do exactly what I tell you. I can tell your friends that we should have been happy to have come with you, but that urgent business required us to be in town. We hope very soon to return to Devonshire. Will you remember to give them that message? If you insist upon it, there is no alternative, I assure you. I saw by the baronet's clouded brow that he was deeply hurt by what he regarded as our desertion. When do you desire to go? He asked coldly. Immediately after breakfast. We will drive into Combe Tracy, but Watson will leave his things as a pledge that he will come back to you. Watson, you will send a note to Stapleton to tell him that you regret that you cannot come. I have a good mind to go to London with you, said the baronet. Why should I stay here alone? Because it is your post of duty, because you gave me your word that you would do as you were told. And I tell you to stay. All right then, I'll stay. Home or direction? I wish you to drive to Mary Pitt House. Send back your trap, however, and let them know that you intend to walk home. To walk across the moor? Yes. Jiraki, hi. But that is the very thing which you have so often concerned me not to do. This time you may do it with safety. If I had not every confidence in your nerve and courage, I would not suggest it, but it's essential that you should do it. Then I will do it. And as you value your life, do not go across the moor in any direction save along the straight path, which leads from Mary Pitt House to the Grimpen Road, and is your natural way home. I will do just what you say. Very good. I should be glad to get away as soon after breakfast as possible, so as to reach London in the afternoon. I was much astounded by this program, though I remembered that Holmes had said to Stapleton on the night before that his visit would terminate next day. It had not crossed my mind, however, that he had wished me to go with him, nor could I understand how we could both be absent at the moment which he himself declared to be critical. There was nothing for it, however, but obedience. So we bid goodbye to our rueful friend, and a couple of hours afterwards we were at the station at Combe Tracy, and had dispatched the trap upon its journey home. A small boy was waiting upon the platform. Any order, sir? You will take this train to town, Cartwright. The moment you arrive, you will send a wire to Sir Henry Baskerville in my name, to say that if he finds the pocketbook which I have dropped, he is to send it by registered post to Baker Street. Yes, sir, and ask at the station office if there is a message for me. The boy returned with a telegram, which Holmes handed to me. It rang. Wire received. Coming down with unsigned warrant. Arrive of 5:40. The Straight. That is an answer to mine of this morning. He is the best of the professionals, I think, and we may need his assistance. Now, Watson, I think that we cannot employ our time better than by calling upon your acquaintance, Miss Laura Lowndes. His plan of a campaign was beginning to be evident. He would use the baronet in order to convince the Stapletons that we were really gone, while we should actually return at the instant when we were likely to be needed. That telegram from London, if mentioned by Sir Henry to the Stapletons, must remove the last suspicions from their mind. Already, I seem to see our net drawing closer around the lean-jawed pike. Miss Laura Leeds was in her office, and Sherlock Holmes opened his interview with a frankness and directness which considerably amazed her. I am investigating the circumstances which attained the death of the late Sir Charles Baskerville, said he. My friend here, Dr. Watson, has informed me of what you have communicated, and also of what you have withheld in connection with that matter. What have I withheld? She asked defiantly. You have confessed that you asked Sir Charles to be at the gate at 10 o'clock. We know that was the place and hour of his death. You have withheld what the connection is between these events. There is no connection. In that case, the coincidence must indeed be an extraordinary one. I think that we shall succeed in establishing a connection after all. I should be perfectly frank with you, Miss Lawns. We regard this case as one of murder, and the evidence may implicate not only your friend Mr. Stapleton, but his wife as well. The lady sprung from her chair. His wife? She cried. The fact is no longer a secret. The person who has passed for his sister is really his wife. Miss Lane had resumed her seat. Her hands were grasping the arms of her chair, and I saw the pink nails had turned white with the pressure of her grip. His wife? He said again. His wife? He is not a married man. Sherlock Holmes shrugged his shoulders. Prove it to me. Prove it to me. And if you can do so, the fierce flash of her eyes said more than any words. I have come prepared to do so, said Holmes, drawing several papers from his pocket. There was a photograph of the couple taken in York 4 years ago. It is endorsed Mr. and Mrs. Van Deller, but you'll have no difficulty in recognizing him. And her also, if you know her by sight. There are 3 written descriptions by trustworthy witnesses of Mr. and Mrs. Valdelor, who at the time kept St. Oliver's private school. You then see if you can doubt the identity of these people. She glanced at them and then looked up at us with the set, rigid face of a desperate woman. Mr. Holmes, she said, this man had offered me marriage on condition that I could get a divorce from my husband. He has lied to me, villain, in every inconceivable way. Not one word of truth has he ever told me, and why? Why? I imagined that all was for my own sake. But now I see that I was never anything but a tool in his hands. Why should I preserve faith with him who never kept any with me? Why should I try to shield him from the consequence of his own wicked act? Ask me what you like. There's nothing which I shall hold back. One thing I swear to you, and that is that when I wrote the letter, I never dreamed of any harm to the old gentleman who had been my kindest friend. I entirely believe you, madam, said Sherlock Holmes. The recital of these events must be very painful to you, and perhaps it will make it easier if I tell you what occurred, and you can check me if I make any material mistakes. The sending of this letter was suggested to you by Stapleton? He dictated it. I presume that the reason he gave was that you will receive help from Sir Charles for the legal expenses connected with your divorce? Exactly. And then after you had sent the letter, he dissuaded you from keeping the appointment. He told me that it would hurt his self-respect that any other man should find the money for such an object, and that though he was a poor man himself, he would devote his last penny to removing the obstacles which divided us. He appears to be a very consistent character. And then you heard nothing until you read the report of the death in the paper? No. And he made you swear to say nothing about your appointment with Sir Charles? He did. He said that the death was a very mysterious one, and that I should certainly be suspected if the facts came out. He frightened me into remaining silent. Quite so. But you had your suspicions. She hesitated and looked down. I knew him. she said. But if he had kept faith with me, I should always have done so with him. I think that on the whole, you have had a fortunate escape, said Sherlock Holmes. You have had him in your power, and he knew it, and yet you are alive. You have been walking for many months, very near to the edge of a precipice. We must wish you a good morning now, Miss Lanes, and it is probable that you will very shortly hear from us again. Our case becomes rounded off, and difficulty after difficulty thins away in front of us, said Holmes, as we stood waiting for the arrival of the express from town. I shall soon be in the position of being able to put into a single connected narrative one of the most singular and sensational crimes of modern times. Students of criminology will remember the Angeles incidents in Little Russia in the year 66, and of course there are the Anderson's murders in North Carolina, but this case possesses some features which are entirely its own. Even now, we have no clear case against this very willy man, but I shall be very much surprised if it is not clear enough before we go to bed this night. The London Express came roaring into the station, and a small, weary bulldog of a man had sprung from a first-class carriage. We all three shook hands, and I saw at once from the way in which the straight gaze of my companion that he had learned a good deal since the days when they had first worked together. I could well remember the scorn which the theories of the reasoner used then to excite in the practical man. Anything good? He asked. Biggest thing for years, said Holmes. We have 2 hours before we need think of starting. I think we might employ it in getting some dinner, and then, Lestrade, we will take the London fog out of your throat by giving you a breath of the pure night air or Dartmoor. Never been there? Ah, well, I don't suppose you will forget your first visit. And that is the end of that chapter. Okay, so this is now chapter 14. We might actually just end up finishing this book tonight, guys. I think it's not too bad. What it only took like 4 streams after like what, a couple months in between. But yeah, after this we'll finally return to the Adventures of Sherlock Holmes. I've been looking up what order you should be reading it in. There's really no specific order. I think it really depends on the person, because there's several different ways you could read it, but they all pretty much say do what was the novel called? What was that? A Study in Scarlet. They all say do that one first. So originally we were starting with we did the first 2 books of the Adventures of Sherlock Holmes. So that's already on the YouTube channel, but we'll probably just reread them just for the hell of it, just because, you know, it's in this book. And then I realized that, oh, we're out of order. So the one the list I found is say like, oh, do this one and then do the Sign of 4 because they're the novels, right? So yeah. So I did look around. So the best order they say, it doesn't really matter. They say always do the Study in Scarlet first, the Sign of Four, and then the Adventures of Sherlock Holmes. But like we started with the Hound of Baskervilles, like whatever. We might as well do with the novels. So we're gonna go back to the Adventures of Sherlock Holmes. We're gonna be doing the Memoir of Sherlock Holmes, the Return of Sherlock Holmes, the Valley of Fear, which is the other novel. And then we'll either do. They did say a lot of the says do the last battle supposed to be the last book. We could do that one, and then we could do the case book of Sherlock Holmes. But like they say, there's really no order. Like they have like orders by publications, chronologically, preferences, I guess. So yeah. Yeah. Because technically the publication orders are different. So yeah. There's a publication order, there's timeline order, and then there's a whole bunch of different ways they say like, oh, like some of these events are between these certain books, some of them are between these other books. I said, okay, let me just go through the order that Autobook has it. Which is what I just said, is like, according to Autobook, their order is A Study in Scarlet, The Sign of Four, The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, The Memoirs of Sherlock Holmes, The Hound of the Baskervilles, The Return of Sherlock Holmes, The Valley of Fear, His Last Bow, and then the Case Book of Sherlock Holmes. That is by Autobooks. And the PDF I actually has, they have it as pretty much the same order, which is, yeah, Study, Sign of Four, The Adventures, Memoir, Return. Yeah, this is the same as Autobooks version. So yeah, I guess we'll just stick with that order. Pretty much, yeah. Because I don't think when the author was doing the books, he didn't do it in order. But it is agreed that A Study of Scarlet is the first book in the series. Although they say that you don't necessarily have to read it in order, but it's recommended to read A Study in Scarlet first, because that's how it shows Sherlock Holmes and Watson first meeting each other. So that's why they always say The Study of Scarlet, to read that one first. But yeah, pretty much they say you could read it in any order. But like I said, they do say to read a Scarlet. It's like some of them say read it, like, to understand from the beginning, read the novel A Study in Scarlet first. But then they say like, oh, that might be a little heavy for some readers to start with, so they say start with the short stories first. So I think it just really depends on the person, I guess. So that's probably why some people start with The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes first, because those are the short stories. And I said, like, I don't mind actually reading the novels because, like, it really gives you that background of the characters, of like how they got from this point. Because personally, I would have, when I started reading Sherlock Holmes, we actually started with The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes. So we read like the first two short stories, but it's like, it's just him and Watson already together on their different adventures already, on their cases. So it's like we never got to see how they first met, which is actually the first novel. And then I realized that I wasn't doing it in the right order, and I said, oh wait, let me look up the order. There's a bunch of different orders, so I just went with one of the orders. And they all suggested reading the novel first, so that's what I did. So I actually stopped reading The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes and switched to the novel, so we get that background of how they actually met. And that was like their first adventure. So yeah. Yeah. I will say that A Study in Scarlet was fine up until the last couple chapters, and where suddenly they did a flashback. Like they were about to apprehend the guy, and then there was a flashback. Like for what, 2 or 3 chapters was just a flashback. And then it went back to the present day where they actually caught the guy. And it pretty much explained from point A to point B, and I said, oh, now it makes sense. But it didn't really specify that this was a flashback, because it went from Sherlock Holmes, and then the next chapter was like, it talked about these 3 people, and I'm saying like, what? Like, what's going on? I thought we were just talking about Sherlock Holmes. Everyone thought that I was reading a completely different story, and I said, no, this is still Sherlock Holmes. But it's like a 3 chapter long flashback. I said that was kind of confusing. Maybe. Okay, so resuming this chapter for real this time, guys. I know I've been chatting randomly for the past couple minutes. What chapter are we on? This is 14. Okay. So yeah, so we have this one and we have one more trapped after this. So yeah, then we'll be done with the story. For those of you curious why I keep doing markers, this actually goes straight into my Discord channel. So so when I have to edit this, so I know where I'm at. Okay, so chapter 14, The Hound of the Baskervilles. One of Sherlock Holmes' defects, if indeed one may call it a defect, was that he was exceedingly loath to communicate his full plans to any other person until the instant of their fulfillment. Partly, it came, no doubt, from his own masterful nature, which loved to dominate and surprise those who are around him. Partly also from his professional caution, which urged him never to take any chances. The result, however, was very trying for those who were acting as his agents and assistants. I had often suffered under it, but never more so than during that long drive in the darkness. The great ordeal was in front of us at last. We were about to make our final effort, and yet Holmes had said nothing, and I could only surmise what his course of action would be. My nerves thrilled with anticipation when, at last, the cold wind upon our faces and the dark void spaces on either side of the narrow road told me that we were back upon the moor once again. Every stride of the horses and every turn of the wheels was taking us nearer to our supreme adventure. Our conversation was hampered by the presence of the driver of the hired wagonette, so that we were forced to talk of trivial matters, when our nerves were tense with emotion's anticipation. It was a relief to me, after that unnatural restraint. When we at last passed Franklin's house, I knew that we were drawing near to the hall and to the scene of action. We did not drive up to the door, but got down near the gate of the avenue. The wagonette was paid off in order to return to Combe Tracy forthwith, while we started to walk to Merripit House. "Are you armed, Lestrade?" The little detective smiled. "As long as I have my trousers. I have a hip pocket, and as long as I have my hip pocket, I have something in it." That's one way to respond. Good. My friend and I are also ready for emergencies. "You're mighty close about this affair, Mr. Holmes." "What's the game now?" "A waiting game." "My word, it does not seem a very cheerful place," said the detective with a shiver, glancing around him at the gloomy slopes of the hill and at the huge lake of fog which lay over the Ginpin Mire. "I see the lights of a house ahead of us." "That is Merripit House and the end of our journey. I must request you to walk on tiptoe and not talk above a whisper." We moved cautiously along the track, as if we were bound for the house. But Holmes halted us when we were about 200 yards from it. "This will do," said he. "These rocks upon the right make an admirable screen." "We are to wait here?" "Yes, we shall make our little ambush here. get into this hollow straight. You have been inside the house. Have you not, Watson? Can you tell the position of the rooms? What are those, I said windows at the side? Think they are the kitchen windows. And the one beyond, which shines so brightly? That is certainly the dining room. The blinds are up. You know the lie of the land. Creep forward quietly and see what they are doing. For heaven's sakes, don't let them know that they are watched. I tiptoed down the path and stopped behind the low wall which surrounded the estate and orchard. Creeping in its shadows, I reached a point where once I could look straight through the uncurtained window. There were only 2 men in the room, Sir Henry and Stapleton. They sat with their profiles towards me, on either side of the round table. Both of them were smoking cigars, and coffee and wine were in front of them. Stapleton was talking animation, but the baronet looked pale and distraught. Perhaps the thought of that lonely walk across the ill-omened moor was weighing heavily upon his mind. As I watched him, Stapleton rose and left the room, while Sir Henry filled his glass again and leaned back in his chair, puffing at his cigar. I heard the creak of a door and the crisp sound of boots upon gravel. The steps passed along the path on the other side of the wall under which I crouched. Looking over, I saw the naturalist pause at the door of an outhouse in the corner of the orchard. A key turned in the lock, and he passed in there with a curious, scuffling noise from within. He was only a minute or so inside, and then I heard the key turn once more, and he passed me and re-entered the house. I saw him rejoin his guests, and I crept quietly back to where my companions were waiting to tell them what I had seen. You say, Watson, that the lady is not there? Holmes asked. I had finished my report. No. Where can she be then, since there is no light in any other room except the kitchen? I cannot think where she is. I have said that over the great Gimpen Mire, there hung a dense white fog. It was drifting slowly in our direction, and baked itself up like a wall on that side of us, low but thick and well-defined. The moon shone on it, and it looked like a gray shimmering ice field, with the heads of the distant tor as rocks borne upon its surface. One's face was turned towards it, and he muttered impatiently as he watched its sluggish drift. It's moving towards us, Watson. Is that serious? Very serious indeed. The one thing upon earth which could have disarranged my plans. It cannot be very long now. It is already 10 o'clock. Our success and even his life may depend upon his coming out before the fog is over the path. The night was clear and fine above us. The stars shone cold and bright, while the half-moon bathed the whole scene in a soft, uncertain light. Before us lay the dark bulk of the house. A serrated roof and bristling chimney, hard outlined against the silvery, mangled sky. Broad bars of golden light from the lower windows stretched across the orchard and the moor. One of them was suddenly shut off. The servants had left the kitchen. There only remained the lamp in the dining room, where the 2 men, the murderous host, and the conscious guest still chatted over their cigar. Every minute that the wide woolly plain which covered one half of the moor was drifting closer and closer to the house, Already the first thin whiffs of it were curling across the golden square of the lighted window. The farther wall of the orchard was already invisible, and the trees were standing out of a swirl of white vapor. As we watched it, the fog wreaths came crawling around both corners of the house and rolled slowly into one dense bank, on which the upper floor and the roof floated like a strange ship upon a shadowy sea. Holmes struck his hand passively upon the rock in front of us and stamped his feet in his impatience. If he isn't out in a quarter of an hour, the path will be covered. In half an hour, we won't be able to see our hands in front of us. Shall we move farther back upon higher ground? Yes, I think it would be as well. So as the fog bank flowed onward, we fell back before until we were half a mile from the house. And still, that dense white sea with the moor, silvery its upper edges, swept slowly and inexorably on. "We are going too far," said Holmes. "We dare not take the chance of his being overtaken before he can reach us. At all costs, we must hold our ground where we are." He dropped on his knees and clapped his ears to the ground. "Thank God, I think that I hear him coming." A sound of quick steps broke the silence of the moor. Crouching among the stone, we stared intently at the silver-tipped bank in front of us. The steps grew louder, and through the fog, as though a curtain. There stepped the man whom we were awaiting. He looked around him in surprise as he emerged into the clear starlit night. Then he came swiftly along the path, passing close to where we lay, and went on up the long slope behind us. As he walked, he glanced continuously over either shoulder, like a man who was ill at ease. "Hiss!" cried Holmes, and I heard the sharp click of the cocked pistol. "Look out! It's coming!" There was a thin, crude, continuous patter from somewhere in the heart of that crawling bank. The cloud was within 50 yards of where we lay, and we glared at it, all three uncertain what heart was about to break from the heart of it. I was at Holmes' elbow, and I glanced for an instant at his face. It was pale and exultant, his eyes shining brightly in the moonlight, but suddenly they started forward in a rigid, fixed stare, and his lips parted in amazement. At the same instant, Lestrade gave a yell of terror and threw himself face downward upon the ground. Sprung to my feet, my inert hand grasping my pistol, my mind paralyzed by the dreadful shape which had sprung out upon us from the shadows of the fog. A hound it was, an enormous coal-black hound, but not such a hound as mortal eyes had ever seen. Fire burst from its open mouth, its eyes glowing with a smoldering glare, its muzzle hackles and dewlap were outlined in flickering flame. Never in the delirious dream of a distorted brain could anything more savage, more appalling, more hellish be conceived than the dark form and savage face which broke upon us out of the wall of fog. With a long bound, the huge black creature was leaping down the track, following hard upon the footsteps of our friend. So paralyzing were we by the apprehension that we allowed him to pass, for we were recovered our nerves. Then Holmes and I were both firing together, and the creature gave a hideous howl, which showed that one at least had hit him. He did not pause, however, but bounded onward. Far away on the path we saw Sir Henry looking back, his face white in the moonlight, his hands rising in a horror, glaring helplessly at the frightful thing which was hunting him down. But the cry of pain from the hound had blown all our fears to the winds. If he was vulnerable, he was mortal, and if we could wound him, we could kill him. Never have I seen a man run as Holmes ran that night. I am reckoning fleet of foot, but he outpaced me as much as I outpaced the little professional. In front of us, as we flew up the track, we heard scream after scream from Sir Henry and the deep roar of the hound. Now was the time to see the beast spring upon his victim, hurl him to the ground, and worry at his throat. But the next instant, Holmes had emptied 5 barrels of the revolver into the creature's flank. With a last howl of agony and vicious snap in the air, it rolled upon its back, 4 feet pawing furiously, and then fell limp upon its side. I stood panting and pressing my pistol to the dreadful shimmering head, but it was useless to press the trigger. The giant hound was dead. Sir Henry lay insensible where he had fallen. We tore away his collar, and Holmes breathed a prayer of gratitude when we saw there was no sign of a wound and that the rescue had been in time. Already our friend's eyelid shivered, and he made a feeble effort to move. The stray thrust his briny flax between the Barrett's teeth, and 2 frightened eyes were looking at us. My God, he whispered. What was it? What in heaven's name was it? It's dead, whatever it is, said Holmes. We've laid the family ghost once and for all. Oh, wait, hold on. We laid the family ghost once and forever. In the mere size and strength, it was a terrible creature which was laying stretched before us. It was not a pure bloodhound. It was not a pure mastiff, but it appeared to be a combination of the two, gaunt, savage, and as large as a small lioness. Even now, in the stillness of death, the huge jaws seemed to be dripping with a bluish flame, and the small, deep-set cruel eyes were ringed with fire. I placed my hand upon the glowing muzzle, and as I held up, my own fingers smothered and gleaming in the darkness. Phosphorus, I said. A cunning preparation of it, said Holmes, sniffing at the dead animal. There was no smell which might have interfered with his power of scent. We owe you a deep apology, Sir Henry, for having exposed you to this fright. I was prepared for a hound, but not for such a creature as this. And the fog gave us little time to receive him. You have saved my life. Having first endangered it, are you strong enough to stand? Give me another mouthful of that brandy, and I shall be ready for anything. So, now if you will help me up, what do you pose to do? To leave you here. You are not fit for further adventures tonight. If you will, wait, one or other of us will go with you to the hall. He tried to stagger to his feet, but he was still ghastly pale and trembling in every limb. We helped him to a rock where he sat shivering with his face buried in his hands. "We must leave you now," said Holmes. "The rest of our work must be done, and every moment is of importance. We have our case, and now we only want our man. It's 1,000 to 1 against our finding him at the house." He continues as we retraced ourselves swiftly down the path. Those shots must have told him that the game was up. We were some distance off, and this fog may have deadened them. He followed the Hound to call him off. Of that you may be certain. No, he's gone by this time. But we'll search the house and make sure. The front door was open, so we rushed in and hurried from room to room to the amazement of a doddering old manservant who met us in the passage. There was no light save in the dining room, but Holmes caught up to the lamp and left no corner of the house unexplored, no sign we could see of the man whom we were chasing. On the upper floor, however, one of the bedroom doors was locked. "There's someone in here," cried Lestrade. "I can hear a movement. Open the door." A faint moaning and rustling came from within. Holmes struck the door just over the lock with the flat of his foot, and it flew open. Pistol in hand, all three rushed into the room, but there was no sign within it of that desperate and defiant villain whom we expected to see. Instead, we were faced by an object so strange and so unexpected that we stood for a moment staring at it in amazement. The room had been fashioned into a small museum, and the walls were lined by a number of glass-topped cases full of that collection of butterflies and moths, the formations of which had been the relaxation of this complex and dangerous man. In the center of this room was an upright beam, which had been placed at some period as a support for the old worm-eaten bulker of timber which spanned the roof. To this post a figure was tied, so swathed and muffled in the sheet which had been used to secure it, that one could not for the moment tell whether it was that of a man or a woman. One tile passed round the throat, and one was secured at the back of the pillar. Another covered the lower part of the face, and the other, and over it 2 dark eyes full of grief and shame and a dreadful questioning, staring back at us. In a moment we had torn off the gag, unswathed the bounds, and Miss Stapleton sank upon the floor in front of us. As her beautiful head fell upon her chest, I saw the clear red wheels of a whiplash across her neck. "The brute!" cried Holmes. "Here, Lestrade, your brandy bottle. Put her in the chair. She has fainted from ill usage and exhaustion." She opened her eyes again. "Is he safe?" she asked. "Has he escaped?" "He cannot escape us, madam." No, I did not mean my husband. Sir Henry, is he safe?" "Yes." "And the Hound?" "It is dead." She gave a long sigh of satisfaction. Thank God. Oh, this villain, see how he has treated me." She shot her arms out from her sleeves, and we saw the horror that they all huddled the bruises. "But this is nothing. It is my mind and soul that he has tormented and defiled. Couldn't endure it all. Ill usage, solitude, a life of deception, everything, as long as I could still cling to the hope that I had his love. But now I know that in this also I have been his dupe and his tool. She broke into passionate sobbing as she spoke. "You bear him no goodwill, madam," said Holmes. "Tell us then where we shall find him. If you have ever aided him in evil, help us now and so atone." "There is but one place where he can have fled," she answered. "There is an old tin mine on an island in the heart of the mire. It was there that he kept his hound, and there also he had made preparations so that he might have a refuge. That is where he would fly." The fog bank lay like white wool against the window. Holmes held the lamp towards it. "See," said he, "no one could find his way into the green pin mire tonight." She laughed and clapped her hands, her eyes and teeth gleaming with fierce merriment. "He may find his way in, but never out," she cried. "How can he see the guiding wands tonight? He planted them together, he and I, to mark the path through the mire. Oh, if I could only have plucked them out today! Then indeed you would have had him at your mercy." It was evident to us that all pursuit was in vain until the fog had lifted. Meanwhile, we left Lestrade in possession of the house, while Holmes and I went back with the baronet to Bakerville Hall. The story of the Stapletons could no longer be withheld from him, but he took the blow bravely when he learned the truth about the woman who he had loved. But the shock of tonight's adventures had shattered his nerves, and before morning he lay delirious in a high fever under the care of Dr. Mortimer. The two of them were destined to travel together around the world before Sir Henry had become once more the hale, hearty man that he had been before he became master of that ill-omened estate. And now I come rapidly to the conclusion of this singular narrative, in which I have tried to make the reader share those dark fears and vague surmises which clouded our lives so long and ended in so tragic a matter. On the morning after the death of the Hound, the fog had lifted, and we were guided by Miss Stapleton to the point where they had found a pathway through the bog. It helped us to realize the horror of this woman's life, when we saw the eagerness and joy with which she laid us on her husband's track. We left her standing upon the thin peninsula of film, a petty soil which tapered out into the widespread bog. From the end of it, a small wand planted here and there showed where the path zigzagged from tuft to tuft of rushes among those green scum pits and foul quagmires which buried the way to the stranger. Rank weeds and lush, slimy water plants sent an odor of decay and a heavy miasmatic vapor onto our faces, with a false step plunge us more than once thigh deep into the dark, quivering mire, which shook 4 yards in soft undulations around our feet. Its tenacious grip plucked at our heels as we walked. When we sank into it, it was as if some elegant hand was tugging us down into those obscene depths so grim and purposeful was the clutch in which it held us up. Once only we saw a trace that someone had passed that privileged way before us. From amid a turf of cotton grass which bore it up out of the slime, some dark things was projecting. Holmes sank to his waist as he stepped from the path to seize it. It had not been there to drag him out. He could never have set his foot upon firm land again. He held an old black boot in the air. Myers Toronto was printed on the leather inside. "It is worth a mud bath," said he. "It is our friend Sir Henry's missing boot, thrown there by Stapleton in his flight." Exactly. He retained it in his hand, after using it to set the Hound upon the track. He fled when he knew the game was up, still clenching it, and he hurled it away at this point of his flight. We know at last that he came so far and safely. But more than that we were never destined to know, though there was much which we might surmise. There was no chance of finding footprints in the mire, for the rising mud oozed swiftly in upon them. But as we at last reached firmer ground beyond the morass, we all looked eagerly for them, but no slightest sign of them ever met our eyes. If the earth told a true story, then Stapleton never reached that island of refuge towards which he struggled through the fog upon that last night. Somewhere in the heart of the great Grimpen mire, down in the foul slime of the huge morass which has sucked him in, this cold and cruel-hearted man is forever buried. Many traces we found of him in the bog island, where he had hid his savage ally. A huge driving wheel and a shaft half filled with rubbish showing the position of an abandoned mine. Beside it were the crumbling remains of the cottages of the miners, driving away no doubt by the foul reek of a surrounding swamp. And one of these, a staple in a chain with a quantity of galling bone, showed where the animal had been confined, a skeleton with a tangle of brown hair appearing to it laying among the debris. "A dog," said Holmes. "By Jove, a curly-haired spaniel. Poor Mortimer will never see his pet again. Well, I do not know that this place contains any secrets which we have not already phantomed. He could hide his hound, but he could not hush its voice, and hence came those cries which, even in daylight, were not pleasant to hear. On an emergency, he could keep the Hound in the outhouse of Manor Pit, but it was always a risk, and it was only on the supreme day, which he regarded as the end of all his efforts, that he dared do it. This paste in the tin is no doubt the luminous mixture with which the creature was daubed. It was suggested, of course, by the story of the family hellhound, and by the desire to frighten old Sir Charles to death. No wonder the poor devil of a convict ran and screamed, even as our friend did, and as we ourselves might have done, when he saw such a creature bounding through the darkness of the moor upon his track. It was a cunning device, for, apart from the chance of driving your victim to his death, what peasant would venture to inquire too closely into such a creature should he get sight of it, as many have done upon the moor? I said it in London, Watson, and I say it again now. But never yet have we helped to hunt down a more dangerous man than he who is lying yonder. He swept his long arm towards the huge, muddled expanse of green splotch bog, which stretched away until it merged into the fastest slopes of the moor. Alright, and that is the end of that chapter. Okay, and this is the last chapter for Sherlock Holmes for this for the novel. So I'm assuming they never get to find this guy then. So chapter 15. A retro speculation. Yeah, like there's only like 15 chapters. It was the end of November, and Holmes and I sat upon a raw and foggy night on either side of a blazing fire in our sitting room in Baker Street. Since the tragic upshot of our visit to Devonshire, he had been engaged in two affairs of the utmost importance. In the first of which he had exposed the misconduct of Colonel Upwood in connection with the famous card scandal of the non-Barrel Club, which in the second he had defended the unfortunate Maud Penshire from the charge of murder which hung over her in connection with the death of her stepdaughter. Mill? Carr, the young lady who, as will be remembered, was found 6 months later alive and married in New York. My friend was in excellent spirits over the success which had attended a succession of difficult and important cases. So that I was able to induce him to discuss the details of the Baskervilles mystery. I had waited patiently for the opportunity, for I was aware that he would never permit cases to overlap, and that his clear and logical mind would not be drawn from its present work to dwell upon memories of the past. Sir Henry and Dr. Mortimer were, however, in London, on the way to the long voyage which had been recommended for the restoration of his shattered nerves. Oh, God. They had recalled upon us that very afternoon, so that it was natural that the subject should come up for discussion. The whole course of events, said Holmes, from the point of view of the man who called himself Stapleton, was simple and direct, although to us, who had no means in the beginning of knowing the motives of his actions, and could only learn part of the facts, it all appeared extraordinarily complex. I have had the advantage of 2 conversations with Miss Stapleton, and the case has now been so entirely cleared up that I am not aware that there is anything which has remained a secret to us. You will find a few notes upon the matter under the heading B in my index list of cases. Perhaps you would kindly give me a sketch of the courses of events from memory? Certainly, though, I cannot guarantee that I carry all the facts in my mind. Intense mental concentration has a curious way of blotting out what has passed. The barrister who has his case at his finger's end and is able to argue with an expert upon his own subject finds that a week or two the course will drive it all out of his head once more. So each of my cases displaced the last. And Mill Carrier has blurred my recollection of the Baskervilles Hall. Tomorrow some other little problem may be submitted to my notice, which will in turn disposes the fair French lady in infamous Upwood. So far as the case of the Hound goes, however, I will give you the course of events as nearly as I can, and you will suggest anything which I may have forgotten. My inquiries show beyond all question that the family portrait did not lie, and that this fellow was indeed a Baskerville. He was the son of the Roger Baskerville, the young brother of Sir Charles, who fled with a sinister reputation to South America, where he was said to have died unmarried. He did, as a matter of fact, marry and had one child. This fellow, whose name is the same as his father's. He married Bernal Garcia, one of the beauties of Costa Rica, and having loaned a considerable sum of public money, he changed his name to Van Duver and fled to England, where he established a school in the east of Yorkshire. His reasons for attending this special line of business was that he had struck up an acquaintance with a consultative tutor upon the voyage home, and that he had used this man's ability to make the undertaking a success. Brian Stewart, the tutor, died, however, and the school which had begun well sank from dispute into infamy. The Van Diggers found it convenient to change their names to Stapleton, and he brought the remains of his fortune, his schemes for the future, and his taste for entomology to the south of England. I learned at the British Museum that he was a recognized authority upon the subject, and that the name Vandaluvere has been permanently attached to a certain moth which he had, in his Yorkshire days, been the first to describe. We now come to that point of his life where it has proved to be such an intense interest to us. The fellow had evidently made inquiry and found that only 2 lives intervened between him and a valuable estate. When he went to Devonshire, his plans were, I believe, exceedingly hazy, but that he meant mischief from the first is evident from the way in which he took his wife with him and the character of his sister. The idea of using her as a decoy was clearly already in his mind, though he may not have been certain how the detail of his plot were to be arranged. He meant in the end to have the estate, and he was ready to use any tool or run any risk for that end. His first act was to establish himself as near his ancestral home as he could, and his second was to cultivate a friendship with Sir Charles Baskerville and with the neighbors. The baronet himself told him about the family, Hound, and so prepared the way for his own death. Stapleton, as I will continue to call him, knew that the old man's heart was weak, and that a shock would kill him. So much he had learned from Dr. Mortimer. He had heard also that Sir Charles was superstitious and had taken this grim legend very seriously. His ingenious mind instantly suggested a way by which the baronet could be done to death, and yet it would be hardly possible to bring home the guilt to the real murderer. Having conceived the idea, he proceeded to carry it out with considerable finesse. An ordinary schemer would have been content to work with a savage hound. The use of artificial means to make the creature diabolical was a flash of genius upon his part. The dog he brought in London was from Ross and Mangles, the dealers in Fulham Road. It was the strongest and most savage in their possession. He brought it down by the Northumberland line and walked a great distance over the moor, so as to get it home without exciting any remarks. He had already on his insect hunts learned to penetrate the Grimpen mire, and so had found a safe hiding place for the creature. Here, he handled it and waited his chance. But it was some time coming. The old gentleman could not be decoyed outside of the grounds at night. Several times Stapleton lurked about with his hound, but without avail. It was during these fruitless quests that he, or rather his ally, was seen by peasants, and that the legend of the demon dog received a new confirmation. He had hoped that his wife might lure Sir Charles to his ruin, but he or she proved exceedingly independent. She would not endeavor to entangle the old gentleman in a sentimental attachment which might deliver him over to his enemy. Threats and even, I'm sorry to say, blows, refused to move her. She would have nothing to do with it, and for a time Stapleton was at a deadlock. He found a way out of his difficulties through the chances that Sir Charles, who had conceived a friendship for himself, made him the minister of his charity in the case of his unfortunate woman, Miss Lord Lanes. By representing himself as a single man, he acquired complete influence over her, and he gave her to understand that in the event of her obtaining a divorce from her husband, he would marry her. His plans were suddenly brought to head by his knowledge that Sir Charles was about to leave the hall on the advice of Dr. Mortimer, with whose opinion he himself pretended to coincide. He must act at once, or his victim might get beyond his power. He therefore put pressure upon Miss Loynes to write the letter, imploring the old man to give her an interview on the evening before his departure for London. He then, by a vacuous argument, prevented her from going, and so had the chance for which he had waited. Driving back in the evening from Combe Tracy, he was in time to get his hound to treat it with his infernal paint and to bring the beast round to the gate, at which he had reason to expect that he would find the old gentleman waiting. The dog, incited by its master, sprung over the wicket gate and pursued the unfortunate baronet, who fled screaming down the yacht alley. In that gloomy tunnel, It must indeed have been a dreadful sight to see that huge black creature, with its flaming jaws and blazing eyes, bounding after its victim. He fell dead at the end of the alley from heart disease and terror. The hound had kept upon the grassy boulder, while the baronet had laid down the path so that no track but the man's was visible. On seeing him laying still, the creature had probably approached to sniff at him, but finding him dead, it turned away again. It was then that it left the print, which was actually observed by Dr. Mortimer. The hound was called off and hurried away to its lair in the Grimpen mire, and a mystery was left which puzzled the authorities, alarmed the countryside, and finally brought the case within the scope of our observation. So much for the death of Sir Charles Baskerville. You perceive the devilish cunning of it, for really it would be almost impossible to make a case against the real murderer. His only accomplice was one who could never give him away, and the grotesque, inconceivable nature of the device only served to make it more effective. Both of the women concerned in this case, Miss Stapleton and Miss Laura Holmes, were left with a strong suspicion against Stapleton. Miss Stapleton knew that he had designs upon the old man, and also of the existence of the hound. Miss Lawrence knew neither of these things, but had been impressed by the death occurring at the time of an uncancelled appointment, which was only known to him. However, both of them were under his influence, and he had nothing to fear from them. The first half of his task was successfully accomplished, but the more difficult still remained. It is possible that Stapleton did not know of the existence of an heir in Canada. In any case, he would very soon learn it from his friend Dr. Mortimer, and he was told by the latter all details about the arrival of Henry Baskerville. Stapleton's first idea was that this young stranger from Canada might possibly be done to death in London without coming down to Devonshire at all. He distrusted his wife ever since she had refused to help him in laying a trap for the old man, and he dared not leave her long out of his sight, for fear he should lose his influence over her. It was for this reason that he took her to London with him. They lodged, I find, at the Mexborough Private Hotel in Craven Street, which was actually one of those called upon by my agent in search of evidence. Here, he kept his wife imprisoned in her room, while he, disguised in a beard, followed Dr. Mortimer to Baker Street, and afterwards to the station and to the Northumberland Hotel. His wife had been inkling of his plans, but she had such a fear of her husband, a fear founded upon brutal ill treatment, that she dared not write to warn the man, whom she knew to be in danger. If the letter should fall into Stapleton's hands, her own life would not be safe. Eventually, as we know, she adopted the expedient of cutting out the words which would form the message and addressing the letter in a disguised hand. It reached the baronet and gave him the first warning of his danger. It was very essential for Stapleton to get some article of Sir Henry's attire so that, in case he was driven to use the dog, he might always have the means of setting him upon his track. With characteristic promptness and audacity, he set about this at once, and we cannot doubt that the boots or chambermaid of the hotel was well bribed to help in his design. By chance, however, the first boot which was procured for him was a new one, and therefore useless for his purpose. He then had it returned and obtained another. A most instructive incident, since it proved exclusively to my mind that we were dealing with a real hound, as no other superstition would explain his anxiety to obtain an old boot, and this indifference to a new one. The more outrage and grotesque an incident is, the more carefully it deserves to be examined. The very point which appears to complicate a case is, when duly considered and scientifically handled, the one which is most likely elucidate it. When we had the visit from our friends next morning, shadowed always by Stapleton in the cab, from his knowledge of our rooms and of my appearance, as well as from his general conduct, I am inclined to think that Stapleton's career of crime has been by no means limited to this single Baskerville affair. It is suggested that during the last 3 years, there have been 4 considerable burglaries in the West Country, for none of which was any criminal ever arrested. The last of these, at Folkestone Court in May, was remarkable for the cold-blooded pistoling of the page, who surprised the masked and solitary burglar. I cannot doubt that Stapleton recruited his waning resources in his fashion, and that for years he has been a desperate and dangerous man. We had an example of his readiness of resource that morning when he got away from us so successfully, and also of his audacity in sending back my own name to me through the cabman. From that moment, he understood that I had taken over the case in London, and that therefore there was no chance for him there. He returned to Dartmoor, and waited the arrival of the baronet. "One moment," said I. "You have no doubt described the sequence of events correctly, but there is one point which you have left unexplained. What became of the hound when its master was in London?" I had given some attention to this matter, and it is undoubtedly of importance, but there can be no question that Stapleton had a confidant, though it is unlikely that he ever placed himself in his power by sharing all his plans with him. There was an old manservant at Mary Pitt House, whose name was Anthony. His connection with the Stapletons can be traced for several years, as far back as the school mastering days, so that he must have been aware that his master and mistress were really husband and wife. This man has disappeared and has escaped from the country. It is suggestive that Anthony is not a common name in England, while Antonio is so in Spanish or Spanish American countries. The man, like Miss Stapleton herself, spoke good English, but with a curious lip-sync accent. I have myself seen this old man cross the screwing-pen mire by the path which Stapleton had marked out. It is very probable, therefore, that in the absence of his master, it was he who cared for the Hound, though he may never have known the purpose for which the beast was used. The Stapletons then went down to Devonshire, whether they were soon followed by Sir Henry and you. One word now as to how I stood myself at that time. It may possibly recur to your memory that when I examined the paper upon which the printed words were fastened, I made a close inspection for the watermark. In doing so, I held it within a few inches of my eyes, and was cautious of a faint smell of the scent known as white jasmine. There are 75 perfumes, which it is very necessary that a criminal expert should be able to distinguish from each other, and cases have more than once, within my own experience, depended upon their prompt recognition. The scent suggested the presence of a lady, and already my thoughts began to turn towards the Stapletons. Thus, I had made certain of the Hound, and had guessed at the criminal before ever we went to the West Country. It was my game to watch Stapleton. It was evident, however, that I could not do this if I were with you, since he would be keenly on his guard. I deceived everybody, therefore yourself included, and I came down secretly when I was supposed to be in London. My hardships were not so great as you imagined, though such trifling details must never interfere with the investigation of a case. I stayed for the most part at Combe Tracy, and only used the hut upon the moor when it was necessary to be near the scene of action. Cartwright had come down with me, and in his disguise as a country boy, he was of great assistance to me. I was dependent upon him for food and clean linen. When I was watching Stapleton, Cartwright was frequently watching you, so that I was able to keep my hand upon all the strings. I have already told you that your reports reached me rapidly, being forwarded instantly from Baker Street to Combe Tracy. They were of great service to me, and especially that one incidentally true piece of biography of Stapleton's. I was able to establish the identity of the man and the woman, and knew, at last, exactly how I stood. The case had been considerably complicated through the incident of the escaped convict, and the relations between him and the Barrymores. This also you cleared up in a very effective way, though I had already come to the same conclusions from my own observations. By the time that you discovered me upon the moor, I had a complete knowledge of the whole business, but I had not a case which could go to a jury. It was Stapleton's attempt upon Sir Henry that night, which ended in the death of an unfortunate convict, did not help us much in proving murder against our man. There seemed to be no alternative but to catch him red-handed, and to do so, we had to use Sir Henry alone, and apparently unprotected, as bait. We did so, and at the cost of the severe shock to our client, we succeeded in completing our case and driving Stapleton to his destruction. That Sir Henry should have been exposed to this is, I must confess, a reproach to my management of the case. But he had no means of foreseeing the terrible and paralyzing spectacle which the beast presented, nor could we predict the fog which enabled him to burst upon us at such short notice. We succeeded in our object at a cost which both the specialists and Dr. Mortimer assure me will be a temporary one. A long journey may enable our friend to recover not only from his shattered nerves, but also from his wounded feelings. His love for the lady was deep and sincere, and to him the saddest part of all this black business was that he should have been deceived by her. It only remains to indicate the part which she had played throughout. There can be no doubt that Stapleton exercised an influence over her which may have been love, or may have been fear, or very possibly both, since they are by no means incompatible emotions. It was at last absolutely effective. At his command, she consented to pass as his sister, though he found the limits of his power over her when endeavored to make her the direct accessory to murder. She was ready to warn Sir Henry so far as she could without implicating her husband, and again she tried to do so. Stapleton himself seems to have been capable of jealousy, and when he saw the baronet playing court to the lady, even though it was part of his own plan, still he cannot help interrupting with a passionate outburst which revealed the fiery soul which his self-contained manner so cleverly concealed. By encouraging the intimacy he made in certain that Sir Henry would frequently come to Mary Pitt House, and that he would sooner or later get the opportunity which he desired. On the day of the crisis, however, his wife turned suddenly against him. She had learned something of the death of the convict, and she knew that the Hound was being kept in the outhouse on the evening that Sir Henry was coming to dinner. She taxed her husband with his intended crime, and a furious scene followed, in which he showed her for the first time that she had a rival in his love. Her fidelity turned into an instant to bitter hatred, and he saw that she would betray him. He tied her up, therefore, that she might have no chance of warning Sir Henry, and he hoped, no doubt, that when the whole countryside put down the baronet's death to the curse of his family, as they certainly would do, he would win his wife back to accept an accomplished fact and to keep silent upon what she knew. In this I fancy that, in any case, he made a miscalculation, and that, if we had not been there, his doom would nonetheless have been sealed. A woman of Spanish blood does not condone such an injury so lightly. And now, my dear Watson, without referring to my notes, I cannot give you a more detailed account of this curious case. I do not know that anything essential has been left unexplained. He could not hope to frighten Sir Henry to death, as he had done the old uncle with his bogey hound. The beast was savage and half-starved. If its appearance did not frighten its victims to death, At least it would paralyze the resistance which might be offered. No doubt. There only remains one difficulty. If Stapleton came into the succession, how could he explain the fact that he, the heir, had been living unannounced under another name so close to the property? How could he claim it without causing suspicion and inquiry? It is formidable difficulty, and I fear that you ask too much when you expect me to solve it. The past and the present are within the field of my inquiry, but what a man may do in the future is a hard question to answer. Miss Stapleton had heard her husband discuss the problem on several occasions. There were 3 possible courses. He might claim the property from South America, establish his identity before the British authorities there, and so obtain the fortune without ever coming to England at all. Or he might adapt an elaborate disguise, though in the short term that he need to be in London. Or again, he might furnish an accomplice with the proofs and papers putting him in as heir, and retaining a claim upon some proportions of his income. We cannot doubt from what we know of him that he would have found some way out of the difficulty. And now, my dear Watson, we have had some weeks of severe work, and for one evening, I think we may turn our thoughts into more pleasant channels. I have a box for less nuts. Have you heard the rescus? Might it trouble you then to be ready in a half an hour? And we could stop at Marcini's for a little dinner on the way. Okay, and that is the end of the story. It's like I saw like blank pages that like, wait, is that the end? Okay. So we'll be continuing. So we'll be reading The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes next week. Today's Saturday, right? What's today? Today is Sunday. I won't be streaming later today. So we'll be live again on Friday. I think that's what I have on the schedule. So we'll be restarting The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, since I don't remember what I read for the first 2 chapters. And then we'll go from there. Okay, so I don't know who is live right now. Let's go through a couple people. We'll see who's on. And thank you, Samara, for the check-in. Yay. So we have nothing of interest. Nothing of interest. Let's check the reading and writing category first. Preferably someone in English. Spanish. Okay, so we have here a small streamer. They are not in followers only mode, which is a plus. 'Cause I think the last time I raided someone, they had followers only mode, and then they just pretty much ignored everything. So we will try this person. I don't know how to say their name. A car, 1999. They are reading. They are writing. So we'll check them out. How do I? So it's raid. Did it go through? Okay, cool. So thank you everyone on the Twitch and YouTube side for coming to today's reading stream. We'll be live again next week. I said earlier in the stream, I know I was using a new plugin to multi-stream, so hopefully the streams came out okay, even though Twitch is telling me it's in the red. I don't know. So yeah, so I'll see everyone next time. Bye.
胸の奥で誰かが叫ぶ答えはまだ見えないけど嘘じゃないものを信じたくて冷たい街に滲む足音途切れそうな約束の影すれ違った言葉のかけら手のひらで温めていた Cry, cry, cry But I won't fall Try, try, try Until I crawl 君が泣いた分だけ僕は立ち上がる傷ついても構わない砕けても構わないその痛みさえ意味になるヘッドライトに揺れるりのり擦り切れた日々をかき鳴らす迷いも罪も背負いながらただ君の方へ進んでる口に出せない思いの奥答えよりも嘘に近いだけど消せない声の余韻胸の奥でまだ響いてる Break, break, break I feel the flame Shake, shake, shake I scream your name 泣いてくれたその分強くなれるなら痛みすら抱きしめて明日へと叫びたいその涙が証になる 崩れかけた景色の中でそれでもなお明かりは消えない引き裂かれても擦り切れても残るのは確かな石だ ガラスの夜に浮かぶ残像胸の奥で誰かが叫ぶ答えはまだ見えないけど嘘じゃないものを信じたくて街に滲む足音途切れそうな約束の影すれ違った言葉のかけら手のひらで温めていた Cry, cry, cry But I won't fall Try, try, try Until I crawl 君が泣いた分だけ立ち上がる傷ついても構わない砕けても構わないその痛みさえ意味になるヘッドライトに揺れるリノリ擦り切れ